I only came back for my prescription. That's when I heard him. My son. His voice low and thrilled. Just a few more hours. Maddie. He laughed. Her account will be empty. Seriously. Would anyone care if my mum went broke? I froze. He was talking about $320,000. My money. My entire future. He was taking everything. My name is Linda Carver. I'm 58 years old. And for the past 3 years, I've been living alone in our quiet suburban house in Aurora, Colorado. That afternoon, I'd driven halfway to my doctor's appointment before realizing I'd left my blood pressure prescription on the kitchen counter. It was a simple mistake. A nuisance. I turned the car around, parked in the driveway, and let myself in the front door, expecting an empty house. I stopped in the hallway. My keys were still in my hand. He was supposed to be at work. My only son, Jason, was in the living room, his back to the hall. His voice was low, but it had an excited, conspiratorial edge I'd never heard before. It made me freeze right where I stood. Just a few more hours. Maddie, he said. And then he laughed. It wasn't his usual laugh. This one was sharp, dismissive. Her account will be empty. Seriously. Would anyone care if my mum went broke? The words hit me like a physical slap. My breath caught in my throat. Broke who me? I pressed myself back against the wall, my heart hammering so loud I was sure he'd hear it. He was still talking. He mentioned numbers that made no sense. Nearly $320,000. The proceeds from selling Carver Ledger Works, the accounting firm, my late husband, Mark, and I had built from nothing over 30 years. He was talking about that money, my entire future. We'll be in Florida before she even knows what hit her. Jason continued, his voice giddy. A whole new life, just like you wanted. And then I heard it. The key that unlocked the entire nightmare. That power of attorney was the smartest thing I ever did. Just in case you get senile, Mom. She bought it completely. I felt the floor drop out from under me. That document. I remembered the day, just a few months ago. Jason, looking so concerned, so responsible. Me, feeling a flicker of pride that my son was finally stepping up, thinking about my well-being. I had signed it right there at the kitchen table, trusting him. 30 years of trust. 30 years of raising him, of loving him, of defending him to Mark. It all disintegrated in that single, brutal moment. My mind flashed to Mark, to the endless nights we'd spent hunched over ledgers, the cheap coffee, the shared dream that built that $320,000. His sudden death from a stroke 3 years ago had nearly broken me. Now, the memory of his hard work felt desecrated by the cold, careless laughter coming from the next room. My first impulse was to scream, to run in there and demand to know how he could do this. But a cold, sharp clarity cut through the panic. If I confronted him now, what would happen? I could see it instantly. He would turn, his face a mask of patronizing concern. He would use my age. He would use my grief. He would twist my words until I was just a confused, hysterical old woman who had misunderstood. He would make me the villain. My hands were shaking so hard, I dropped my keys. The jangle on the hardwood floor sounded like a gunshot. I heard the conversation in the living room stop. I didn't breathe. I scooped up the keys, my fingers fumbling, and I backed away. I moved like a thief, pulling the front door silently shut, praying the latch wouldn't click. I retreated from my own home, a home that suddenly felt alien, a stage set for my own destruction. As I fumbled with the car door, a thought, dark and unfamiliar, began to form revenge. I sat in the car in the pharmacy parking lot for a long time. The tears finally came, hot and bitter. But this wasn't just grief. This was rage. This was the terrifying realization that my son didn't just see me as his mother. He saw me as a line item, an obstacle to be cleared, an expense to be written off. I wiped my face, the tears stopping as abruptly as they had started. I would not let my life end this way. I would not be the punchline to his cruel joke. I picked up my phone. My fingers scrolled through the contacts, past neighbours, past my doctor, past the few friends I still saw for lunch. I stopped at one name, Gloria, my old college roommate, my polar opposite, my most ruthless friend. I pressed the call button. If anyone could help me burn this all to the ground, it was Gloria Reyes. The drive to the 24/7 diner, the one Gloria practically lived in, was a blur of traffic lights and ghosts. My hands ached from gripping the steering wheel. With every mile, my life replayed itself, not as a comfort, but as a series of blindingly obvious mistakes. I saw Mark and me, young, huddled over a card table in our tiny apartment, sketching out the logo for Carver Ledgerworks. We had built that company from scratch, our success measured in late nights and takeout boxes, until we were one of the most respected small firms in Denver. Then, 3 years ago, the stroke. Mark was gone in an instant, and my world just stopped. I was drowning, and Jason, my Jason, had been my anchor. He was the one who held me, who handled the arrangements. He was the one who, a few months later, gently suggested selling the company. "You've worked hard enough." "Mom," he'd said, his voice so soft, "you deserve to rest." I thought it was love. I thought it was concern. Now I saw it was the opening move. And then came Madison Sloan, his new wife, with her perfect white teeth and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was all about Instagram, about living your best life, which apparently involved coastal real estate and endless talk of financial freedom. She spoke about cryptocurrency and high-risk investments as if they were the only sane way to live. I'd tried to like her. I'd hosted the bridal shower. Her questions, which I had dismissed as polite interest, now replayed in my head with sinister clarity. "Linda, your retirement accounts must be so well managed. Being an accountant, did Mark leave a large life insurance policy and the one that made my stomach clench? It's so amazing you co-signed that business loan for Jason. He's so lucky to have a mother who supports his dreams. He burns through money like dry leaves." "Linda, Mark used to warn me. He'd say it after Jason came. Again, asking for a loan to cover rent or a car payment. I always waved it away. He's just finding his feet." "Mark, it's just father-son friction. I see it now. I wasn't being a supportive mother. I was being an enabler. I was funding the habit, and the habit had become an addiction to my money." Gloria. Her face swam up in my memory, a sharp, welcome contrast to my own foolishness, my fiery Puerto Rican friend, who had looked at me over a margarita just 6 months ago and said, "Do not sign that power of attorney at Frontier Federal without a lawyer. Linda, I don't care if he is your son. Business is business." I had laughed. I had told her she was being cynical. I remembered Jason's last visit, just a week ago. He'd shown up flustered, carrying a thick sheaf of papers, new health insurance forms. "Mum, It's a one-day-only offer to lock in your rate. We have to sign it right now. He'd been so insistent, tapping his pen on the counter. A tiny flicker of suspicion had sparked in me. It felt rushed, wrong, but I'd pushed it down. This was Jason, my boy, looking out for me. I'd signed where he pointed. The shame was a physical weight, pressing me into the driver's seat. It wasn't just that I had been stupid. It was the agonizing realization that Jason wasn't some naive kid led astray by a new wife. He had actively, meticulously, used my love and my trust, my weakest points against me. He had studied me. I pulled into the diner's parking lot, the neon sign buzzing overhead. I'd told myself on the phone that I just wanted my money back, that getting the $320,000 back would be enough. But sitting there, in the sudden quiet of the parked car, I knew it wasn't. It wasn't enough. I wanted him to feel this. I wanted him to know the specific terror of having the ground beneath his feet. Everything he thought he controlled, yanked away without mercy. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back was old. The lines around my eyes and mouth, earned from laughter and grief, seemed deeper tonight. But the eyes were new. They were cold, and they were clear. For the first time in my life, I felt absolutely no desire to cover for my son. Gloria was waiting in her usual booth at the back of the 24/7 diner, the one under the flickering fluorescent light. The smell of old coffee and frying oil hung thick in the air. I slid onto the cracked vinyl seat, my hands shaking so badly I had to hide them in my lap. I told her everything. The words came out in a ragged whisper, the forgotten prescription. The open door, Jason's voice, the laugh. I told her about just a few more hours, and would anyone care if my mum went broke? I told her about the $320,000, about Florida, about the power of attorney he'd tricked me into signing in case I get senile. Gloria didn't say a word. She didn't offer a platitude or touch my arm. She just listened. Her dark eyes fixed on my face, her grip on her black coffee mug tightening until her knuckles were bone white. When I finally finished, the silence in the diner felt deafening. She took a slow sip of her coffee, then set the mug down with a deliberate, hard thud. Well, crap. Linda, she said, her voice low and rough. The second he looked at his girlfriend and called you a financial liability, he stopped being your son. You need to understand that. Right now. He's not family anymore. He's just another low-life man stealing from a senior citizen. And that's exactly how we're going to treat him. My first instinct, even then, was to defend him, to find an excuse. Gloria saw it. Don't, she snapped, holding up a hand. Don't you dare say Madison put him up to it. He's a grown man. He built this trap, and you're not going to cry your way out of it. You're going to get smart. You're playing the long game. What does that mean? It means you don't go home and scream at him. You don't call him. You pretend you heard nothing. You be the poor, grieving, slightly confused widow they're counting on. You let them get comfortable. You let them get sloppy. And while they're planning their beach vacation, you are quietly gathering every single piece of evidence to bury them. She didn't wait for me to agree. She pulled out her phone, her sharp red nails tapping on the screen. My cousin Miguel. He works for that big Denver firm, Harper and Knox. They have a whole department that eats bastards like Jason for breakfast. Elder fraud. She put the phone to her ear. Miguel. It's Gloria. Yeah. I'm fine. Listen, I'm sending someone to you tomorrow morning, my best friend. Cancel whatever you have. This is big. She hung up and pointed her phone at me. Tomorrow, 9 a.m.? But before that, you go to a copy shop, not your house, and you print every single document you have. Bank statements, that power of attorney, any emails from him about money. Get copies of everything before he decides to help you organize your files and they disappear. The word email jolted my memory. I pulled out my own phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen. He had me sign some health insurance papers last week. He was in a hurry. I scrolled through my inbox, past pharmacy reminders and sales alerts. Then I saw it. An automated email from a business lender I'd never heard of, dated 2 days ago. Your e-signature has been received for Carver Legacy Consulting, LLC. Gloria, I whispered, the blood draining from my face. What is Carver Legacy Consulting? She leaned across the table and took the phone from me. Her eyes scanned the attached document, her expression darkening. Oh, that son of a bitch, she hissed. He didn't just take your signature for insurance. This is a business loan, a big one. He created a shell company, and he used your power of attorney to make you the sole guarantor. He's using your name, Linda. If he defaults, and he will, they don't come for him. They come for you. They take your house. He's not just emptying your accounts. He's strapping you with his debt. A hot, violent rage unlike anything I had ever felt surged through me. I stood up so fast the table lurched, spilling coffee. I'm going over there. I'm going to confront him right now. Sit down. Gloria's voice was like a whip crack. She grabbed my wrist and yanked me back into the booth. You do that, and you lose everything. He'll say you're hysterical. He'll use that power of attorney to have you declared incompetent. He'll have you in a state facility inside a week. You will promise me. Linda, you will let the law and this plan work. Do not let your anger ruin the only chance you have to nail them both. I stared at her, breathing hard, the tears of rage cooling on my cheeks. I nodded, the fight draining out of me, replaced by something cold and hard. Good, she said. We need a name, a project code. We're accountants, after all. A grim smile touched her lips. We'll call it Operation End of Life Accounting. We're not just getting your money back. We're making sure he can never use any old person as his personal piggy bank again. On the drive back, the night felt different. I felt like a stranger in my own car. I picked up my phone, opened the voice recorder, and hit record. My name is Linda Carver, I said, my voice clear and steady. It is 9:40 p.m. I am of sound mind and body. I proceeded to recount, word for word, everything I had heard in the hallway. I was creating my first exhibit. That night, I went into my home office for the first time in months. I turned on my old computer, the screen illuminating my face in the dark. I opened a new spreadsheet. I wasn't an accountant serving a client. I was a woman auditing her own life and meticulously designing the map for her revenge. The meeting at Harper & Knox was in a high-rise building in downtown Denver, the kind of place with polished marble floors and hushed, expensive air. It felt a world away from my suburban kitchen. Amelia Harper, Gloria's cousin, Miguel's boss, was sharp, dressed in a severe navy suit. And she didn't waste time on sympathy. She spread printouts across a vast mahogany table. Mrs. Carver, this is significantly worse than a single power of attorney, she said, her voice crisp. Jason hasn't just been accessing your primary account. He used your address to register 3, possibly 4, shell corporations. He's opened multiple credit cards in your name, the ones with high limits. And that loan for Carver Legacy Consulting. It's one of several, my accounting brain, dormant for 3 years, clicked online, shell companies, co-signed loans. He was building a house of cards on my credit, my name, my home. And he was planning to pull the plug and leave me buried in the rubble. This is a classic, albeit aggressive, case of elder financial exploitation. Amelia continued, leaning forward. They prey on trust, and they rely on the victim being perceived as confused or incapable. She paused, her gaze intense. Their biggest miscalculation. Linda, is you. You are perfectly lucid, and you're a 30-year veteran accountant. You speak their language. That's our weapon. Her validation was like a steel rod slipped down my spine. I wasn't just a victim. I was a professional. Amelia's first instruction was practical. That same day, I drove to a small, independent credit union clear on the other side of town, a place Jason would never think of. I opened a new account under my name, only. I systematically moved every cent I could from my smaller retirement funds and savings accounts, funds Jason hadn't yet targeted, into this new, secret location. I left just enough in the main account at Frontier Federal, a substantial amount, enough to keep him focused on it. It was bait. That evening, I did the hardest thing yet. I picked up the phone and dialed Jason. My hand was steady, but my stomach roiled. He answered on the second ring. Hey, Mom, what's up? I took a breath and let my voice tremble just a little. Oh, Jason. Honey, I'm just a bit turned around. I was looking for my, the little white pills, the ones for my pressure. I intentionally fumbled the name of the medication I had taken every day for 10 years. I heard the shift in his tone. It wasn't just patience. It was patronizing patience. Lisinopril. Mom, it's Lisinopril. Are you okay? Yes. Yes. All this paperwork. It's all so much. I let out a shaky sigh. It was silent for a beat. Then, just as Gloria had predicted, he took the bait. Mom, I was worried about this, he said, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. Maddie and I were just talking about it. Why don't we come over this weekend? We can just help you get a handle on all your financials. Make sure everything's in order. Oh, would you? I cooed. That would be such a help. You're a good boy. Jason. I hung up and felt like I needed to scrub my skin. The next 2 days, I prepared for their visit. Gloria had given me a housewarming gift, a sleek, modern digital photo frame. It was on sale. She'd winked, tapping the side. The recorder inside it, however, was top of the line. I placed it on the mantelpiece in the living room, directly opposite the couch, and loaded it with old photos of Mark and me. A perfect, silent witness. I spent an hour in front of my bathroom mirror, practicing. I practiced letting my eyes go unfocused. I practiced asking the same question twice in the span of 5 minutes. I practiced a look of mild, pleasant confusion. It was the most important performance of my life. When they arrived on Saturday, all smiles and carrying pastries, I was ready. I let Jason pull out my bank files. I tried to look at the main account online. I said, looking flustered as I puttered around with coffee cups. But I just can't seem to remember the password. It's all so complicated. Jason and Madison shared a look. It was subtle. A tiny smirk from Madison. A flash of smugness from Jason. "Don't you worry about that." "Mum," he said, pulling out his own laptop. "I've actually got all your passwords saved. I've been checking in on it for you, just to make things easier." He proceeded to log in, right in front of me, telling me far more than he realized about how long he'd had access. Madison, however, was the one who truly revealed their hand. She sat next to me on the couch, placing her cold hand over mine. "Linda, we were thinking, this house is so big for you, and with your, well, with your memory getting a little fuzzy, we worry." She smiled, that bright, empty, Instagram smile. "There's this beautiful place, Sunrise Oaks Assisted Living. It's top of the line. You wouldn't have to worry about a single thing, ever again. We could sell the house, put the money into the facility's trust, and we would handle all the finances for you." The tiny red light on the photo frame was invisible, but I knew it was capturing her voice, so sweet and reasonable, as she described the expensive cage they were building for me. Then Jason, looking at the spreadsheet on his laptop, muttered the line that sealed their fate. "It's not like you'll even use all this money anyway." "Mum." They stayed for another hour, organizing. When they finally left, promising to bring the Sunrise Oaks brochures next time, I didn't go to the door. I stood at the living room window, watching their car back out of my driveway. There were no tears. I walked to my office, retrieved the micro SD card from the photo frame, and sat down at my desk. I opened my new spreadsheet, like a good accountant. I began to log the evidence, noting the date, time, and exact, damning words of my debtors. The audit of my son was officially underway. My accounting brain, the one I had let sleep since Mark died, was now wide awake. I still had contacts, old colleagues who owed me favors. I called Ron, who had been my senior partner at Carver Ledgerworks, and asked him to do a quiet search on the public business registry for Madison Sloan and Jason Carver. The results came back in less than a day, and they were chilling. It wasn't one company. It was a series of them, at least 4 LLCs registered in the last 2 years. They all look like ghosts. Linda, Ron told me over the phone. Vague names. Consulting. Acquisitions. They're opened. Maybe a loan is taken out against them, and then they're dissolved in under 18 months. It's a classic shell game. I brought the list to Amelia Harper. She tapped the paper, her face grim. "This is a pattern. This is professional," she said. "It's time we bring in someone who specializes in this." She introduced me to Cole Briggs. He was a private investigator, a tall, quiet man who looked more like a tired geography teacher than a former detective. But he had spent 15 years on the Denver PD's Elder Fraud Task Force. I told him my story, and he listened patiently, taking few notes. But when I got to Jason's wife, he stopped me. "Madison Sloan," he repeated, looking up sharply. "That name. I've heard that name." 2 days later, Cole met me and Amelia in her office. He slid a thin, photocopied file across the table. "This was out of Texas, about 5 years ago," he said. "It never went to prosecution. The family was too embarrassed. They just wanted it to go away." I opened the file. The last name was different Clark, but the complaint was identical. A whirlwind romance. A new wife who just wanted to help her in-laws with their retirement planning. They lost their house and their entire pension. Stapled to the inside cover was a copy of a driver's license. The hair was a cheap, brassy blonde, not the elegant dark brown Madison wore now, and she was a few years younger. But it was her. The same smile that didn't reach the eyes, the same predatory emptiness. A wave of sickness washed over me. I wasn't special. I wasn't even the first. I was just the next name on her list. "It gets worse," Cole said, his voice flat. He had pulled the threads on that company I'd seen, Carver Legacy Consulting. "He's in deep with a company called Northline Data Systems. It's a fake, a front for taking out massive, fraudulent business loans." He pointed to a document. Jason co-signed on a loan for nearly $500,000, but internal emails we found show he's already been siphoning that money off, moving it to an account Madison controls. I didn't understand. But if he defaults... Exactly. Cole cut in. The entire loan is co-signed by his elderly mother, who has a history of confusion and memory lapses. He's not just stealing your $320,000, Linda. He's planning to dump this $500,000 debt on you. He's building a case to frame you for the whole Northline fraud. The air left my lungs. This wasn't just a theft. It was a complete annihilation. They would flee the country, and I'd be left bankrupt, homeless, and facing a federal indictment for fraud. The next meeting was larger. Amelia and Cole were there, but they brought a third person, Kelsey Ward, a sharp, no-nonsense assistant district attorney. "Mrs. Carver," Kelsey began, "we are formally opening an investigation into financial exploitation, but to get a conviction that sticks, we need to catch them in the act. We need to prove coercion." The plan was terrifying. I was to continue my performance, but I had to escalate. I had to pretend to be breaking down, overwhelmed by the brochures for Sunrise Oaks, desperate to have them just take over. They would see this as their chance to get me to sign the final documents, the sale of the house, the final transfer of all assets. The DA's office would be monitoring everything, with cameras and audio. "This is the most important part. Linda," Kelsey said, leaning in, "you cannot, under any circumstances, reveal that you know anything. He is your son. He will cry. He will tell you he loves you. He will threaten you. You must play the part of the confused, trusting mother all the way to the end. Can you do that?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. As the meeting ended, Cole held back. "Kelsey's got the criminal side covered," he said quietly. "But there's the personal side, the part that matters to you and Mark." He paused. "Right now, Jason is still your legal heir. You need to go back to Amelia, tomorrow, and you need to change your will. Quietly. Legally. Cut him out completely. Set up a trust in Mark's name, dedicated to helping victims of elder fraud. Make sure that when this is all over, he gets nothing, not one red cent of his father's legacy." It was the cruelest, most perfect, most legal piece of revenge I could imagine. Amelia laid the last stack of papers in front of me. Not the will. Not yet. These were the legal authorizations for the police surveillance, for the DA to access my accounts, for the investigation to officially begin. This was the signature that would send my son to prison. I thought of Mark, of his laugh that used to fill our house. I thought of Jason's laugh, cold and dismissive, in that same hallway. I picked up the pen. This time, my hand was perfectly steady. The visits from Jason increased. He stopped by almost every day now, usually around dinner time, always carrying a bag of lukewarm fast food. His demeanor was sickeningly sweet. "Just making sure my best girl is okay," he'd say, kissing the top of my head. Don't you worry about a thing. Mum, I'm handling all the complicated stuff. You just rest. But his eyes were never at rest. They were constantly scanning my desk, the mail on the counter, the file cabinet in the hall. He was hunting for any remaining documents, any assets he might have missed. I leaned into the role he'd cast for me. I was the doting, fading mother. Oh, Jason, thank you. I'd sigh. Sometimes I'd forget where I put the TV remote. Other times, I'd test the waters. I was looking at my bank statement. It looked a little low. Did you have to move some money for that prescription? He'd laugh. A light, airy sound that scraped my nerves. No, Mom. Of course not. That was me. Remember, I moved it into that new high-yield investment account I told you about. Your old account was earning, like, 0.01%. I'm making your money work for you. It's all perfectly safe. One afternoon, Madison came by alone. It was the first time. She had her iPad and an air of predatory efficiency. Linda, you're just letting your retirement account sit there, she said, pulling up a chair next to me on the couch. We need to optimize your interest rates. She helped me log in, her fingers flying across the screen. For a split second, she opened a screen showing a complex diagram of recent transfers, massive sums moved to new, unfamiliar account numbers. She clicked away from it quickly, but not before the camera in the photo frame, and my own sharp eyes, had registered it. Cole would have his proof. Then she produced a fresh document from her expensive handbag. This is just a formality. Linda, it's a new authorization. It just makes it easier for us to handle things. You know, in case you get confused and accidentally tell the bank the wrong thing, or try to move money you forgot was already invested. This just lets us fix any mistakes for you. She was asking me to sign away my last shred of control. She handed me the pen. My hand began to tremble, a tremor that was only half pretense. I looked at the signature line, then up at her smiling face. I let the pen slip from my fingers, clattering to the floor. Oh, dear me, I whispered, flustered. My hands are just so shaky today. How clumsy. As I bent over slowly to retrieve it, I was buying time, letting the hidden recorder capture every single damning, coercive word. The real tension, however, came from Gloria. She called me late that night, skipping all pleasantries. I saw him. She snapped. At the keg. He was in a booth with some guy in a cheap suit. I sat one over. They were loud. She said Jason was laughing, bragging about how he'd have the old lady in Sunrise Oaks before the 1st of the month. He said he had to move fast. Gloria relayed, her voice tight, before the bank starts flagging the Northline loan applications. There was a heavy pause. Linda, that's not the worst part. He was asking the suit about legal guardianship. He was building a case that you're mentally incompetent. He wants a judge to sign over complete control. If he gets that, he doesn't need to trick you into signing things anymore. He'll be your legal owner. You'll be a hostage in your own life. I hung up and walked out onto the cold back patio. I sat on the steps, pulling my thin cardigan around me. I thought back years, to when Mark was alive. Jason had totaled his 3rd car in 2 years, and Mark had been apoplectic, shouting that he was done, that he was calling our lawyer to cut Jason out of the will entirely. I had been the one who talked him down. I had cried. I had pleaded. He's just finding his way. Mark. He's our son. Now, in the dark, I saw the truth. I hadn't been shielding Jason from the consequences. I had been his accomplice. I had spent 30 years teaching him that there would always be a soft place to land, a check to cover his mistakes. I had made myself the perfect, final mark. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Kelsey Ward, the assistant DA. Her voice was all business, sharp and fast. Linda, they just found something. Jason applied for a new home equity line of credit against your house 2 days ago. It's for a very large amount. The application is pending, which means it's about to be approved. We're out of time. He's getting desperate. I already knew what she was going to say. We have to push him. Kelsey said, we need to accelerate the plan. You need to call him. You need to sound like you're at your breaking point. Tell him you're ready to sign everything. Tell him you want one big family meeting to get it all over with. We will make that meeting the sting. I'll do it, I said. The words came out flat, hollow. After I hung up, my first call was to Gloria. I'm scared, I whispered, the admission tearing out of me. Gloria, I'm terrified. Not of him, not anymore. I'm scared to see his face when they put the cuffs on him. I'm scared to know, finally, that the son I thought I knew never really existed at all. Gloria was quiet for a moment. I know, honey, she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. But that's the fear of a broken heart. You've got to be more afraid of the alternative. You be more afraid of that nursing home. You be more afraid of him and that witch toasting your memory on a beach in Florida. That fear is the one that will save your life. She was right. The fear of being erased was greater than the fear of the truth. I waited until the next morning. My nerves stretched thin as old thread. I dialed his number. The tremor in my voice was real this time. I didn't have to act. Jason, I said, letting my voice crack just enough. Honey, it's Mom. Hey, Mom. You okay? You sound shaky. I'm just so tired. Jason, I'm tired of all this money talk, the brochures, the accounts. It's too much for me. I took a shuddering breath. I want it to be done. I want you to just handle it. Like you said, can you both just come over this weekend? We can sign whatever we need to sign and just be finished with it all in one day. The silence on his end was brief, but I heard the sharp intake of breath. He thought the fruit was finally ripe for picking. Oh, Mom. Yes. Of course. That's the best idea you've had. We'll make it so easy for you. His voice was bright, relieved, laced with that same excitement I'd heard in the hall. In fact, I'll bring my financial advisor. He's a top guy. He can walk us through the final steps and make it all official. We'll be there Saturday, 10 o'clock. I knew who that financial advisor was. Cole had already identified him as shady broker who had been named in the initial investigation of Northline Data Systems. This wasn't just a signing, it was the closing of their entire con. I hung up and immediately called Kelsey. The machine was in motion. She, Amelia, and Cole coordinated with the Aurora PD. They secured the warrants, full audio and video surveillance of my living room, and an emergency arrest warrant, ready to be executed the second they had clear evidence of coercion or overt fraud. Gloria came over the day before the meeting. She didn't come for comfort. She came to sanitize the environment. We walked through the house, room by room, taking down the photographs. We took down Jason's high school graduation picture. We took down the family portrait from that Christmas 5 years ago. My walls looked bare, sterile, You can't look him in the eye and see that little boy, she said firmly, packing them into a box for storage. You have to see the man who's coming to rob you. She left only a photo on the mantelpiece of Mark and me, taken 20 years ago on a beach in California. He had his arms wrapped around me, and we were both laughing, genuinely laughing, squinting against the sun. That is who you're doing this for, Gloria said, tapping the glass. For him? And for you? The night before. My phone lit up with a text from Jason. I know you're confused, Mum, but don't worry. We have a plan. You just need to trust us. I stared at the words. Trust us. The audacity of it burned away the last wisps of my fear, replacing it with a cold, hard resolve. I would show him what a plan looked like. Saturday morning. Cole arrived at 8 o'clock, before the sun was fully up. He was all business, no small talk. He taped a transmitter to my back and threaded a wire up to the collar of my favourite wool cardigan, attaching a microphone smaller than a grain of rice. The team is in an unmarked van 2 houses down, he said quietly. We hear and see everything. Remember the brief. Linda. At some point, you must ask the key question. We need his answer on tape. Does this document make me lose control of my money? Ask it clearly. Get his response. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find them. Jason was dressed sharply in a blue blazer, but I could see the dark circles under his eyes and the tension in his jaw. He was vibrating with a high-strung energy. Madison was immaculate, her makeup perfect, her smile cemented in place. She carried a thick, leather-bound folder embossed with a gold logo Everline Wealth Management, a completely fictitious company. They sat on my couch. The advisor, thankfully, was running late, meaning Jason felt confident enough to handle this himself. He opened the folder. Okay, Mom, this is it. We're just going to make everything simple, he said, his voice taking on a quick, rehearsed rhythm. He began sliding papers across the coffee table. This one is just the new full power of attorney. It replaces that old one. This is an irrevocable asset transfer. It just moves things into the trust for efficiency. And this is just the authorization to sell the real estate. He kept repeating that phrase. Just a formality, like an incantation. He was talking fast, trying to overwhelm me, to make me feel too slow to question. I let my eyes glaze over, nodding vaguely. I picked up the paper regarding the house. Oh, dear. This all looks so official. If I sign this? I asked, tapping the page. Who owns the house after this? I saw him hesitate. It was a flicker, a brief moment of uncertainty before the mask snapped back on. Well, the asset management company. Mum. Everline. But I'm the main representative, so it's all the same. It's just like I'm representing you. It's for tax purposes. It's just a formality. He had lied, a direct, provable lie, and he had done it while looking away, his eyes darting toward Madison for confirmation. He was nervous. He was under pressure. This wasn't a son helping his mother. This was a criminal trying to close a deal. I saw the crack in his foundation. He wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. And that desperation was the exact weakness I was going to use to break his entire "it's for your own good" story wide open. Madison leaned forward, her voice dropping into a tone of intimate, false conspiracy. And the best part, Linda is the lifetime care package. It's what Sunrise Oaks is famous for. Once you're settled, you will never have to think about another bill, or stocks, or finances, ever again. It's total peace of mind. She was selling me my own prison sentence. I let the silence hang for a moment, keeping my gaze soft and unfocused. Then, I tilted my head. My goodness, that does sound impressive. Dear, I said, my voice thin. Madison, it's just a silly old thought, but back in Texas, did your first husband's parents get a lifetime package just like this one? The smile on Madison's face didn't fall. It froze, like porcelain cracking. Her carefully painted lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Her face went 2 shades paler. Jason, who had been impatiently tapping the stack of papers, looked up. Texas. What are you talking about? Mom, Maddie's from Chicago. I immediately waved my hand, forcing a light, fluttering laugh. Oh, goodness. Listen to me. Pay me no mind. Jason. My mind just gets jumbled. I looked at Madison with a vacant smile. I must have read something. Dear. You know. You see so many of those terrible scams on the news. Terrible stories about old people in Texas being taken advantage of. I must have just mixed you up with someone else. How silly of me. In the unmarked van down the street, I knew Kelsey and Cole were hearing this. They would understand I wasn't just playing the part of the confused victim. I was applying the scalpel. Madison's composure snapped. The warm, concerned caregiver vanished, replaced by something cold and brittle. Linda, that's a horrible thing to say. You sound paranoid, she said, her voice hard. Why would you even think that? Honestly, who would go to the trouble of scamming a poor widow? It's not like you have that much left anyway. She kept talking, trying to cover her slip, but she only dug herself deeper. I mean, after you sold the company. Jason told me you already gave a huge portion of that money to some charity fund. Right. We're just trying to protect what's left. My heart gave a single, hard thump. Jason had never told her that. I had made that charitable donation in Mark's name privately, months before she was even in the picture. The only way she could know that detail was by illegally accessing my sealed tax returns. Cole had been right. She wasn't just an opportunist. She was a professional predator who did her homework. I decided it was time to push them off the cliff. Oh, you're right. You're right, I murmured, looking down. It's just so hard to keep track. All this paperwork. I turned to the small drawer in the end table beside me, the one they thought was just full of old crosswords. I pulled out a single, folded document. It was the legally certified copy of my new will, filed by Amelia Harper just last week. What's that? Jason asked, annoyed. It's just, with all this talk of me being forgetful, my lawyer said I should read this over, just so I remember what I did. I said softly. I unfolded it and began to read aloud, my voice clear and steady. Article 4. Disposition of residue. I hereby bequeath the entirety of my remaining estate, including all real property, liquid assets, and personal effects, to be placed in a trust known as the Mark Carver Foundation for victims of elder fraud. I didn't even get to finish the sentence. What Jason's voice was a low growl. He lunged forward and ripped the document from my hand. His eyes scanned the page, his face cycling from confusion to disbelief, to a dark, blotchy red I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. The Mark Carver Foundation. What the hell is this? What did you do? He stood up, towering over me, the paper crumpled in his fist. You can't do this, he shouted, all pretense of the loving son gone, replaced by the raw panic of a cornered animal. You're not lucid enough to change a will. You're not. I'll contest this. I swear to God. Mom, I will take you to court and have you declared incompetent. I will get legal guardianship. There it is. I thought. The words, a silent prayer to the microphone on my collar. There's your coercion. There is his intent. He had just confessed, on a police wire, exactly what he planned to do if I didn't comply. Madison saw the disaster. Jason. Shut up, she hissed. She leaped up and grabbed his arm, her red nails digging into his blazer. Not here. The kitchen. Now. She dragged him out of the living room, but they didn't know how good the surveillance equipment was. They thought a wall would protect them. I sat perfectly still as their frantic, furious whispers carried back to me. Are you insane? Madison spat. You just blew everything we have to get her signature today. She changed the will. Maddie, it's gone. There's nothing left for us. Shut up. Jason, if we get the signatures on the Everline papers, we control the assets now. The will won't matter. But if we don't close this today, that North Line loan is going to be flagged by the bank. The money will be frozen. And you know how deep we are. We will be the ones left holding the bag. We finish this. The last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The final, undeniable link between the corporate fraud and the theft of my life savings. A moment later, they walked back in. Their faces were pale, their smiles forced back on like grotesque masks. Jason looked like he was going to be sick. Madison was all cold. Hard business. Mum, Jason said, his voice strained. Sorry about that. Just a small disagreement. We're fine. Madison pushed the stack of papers and the pen back across the coffee table toward me. Let's just get this finished. Linda, it's for your own good. I looked at them. My son, his wife, the people who had come to erase me. Outside, I knew the team was ready. They had everything. They were just waiting for the final, definitive act. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady, but I made it tremble. I lowered the nib toward the first signature line, ready to spring the trap. The blue ink of the pen nib touched the paper, hovering over the signature line for the full power of attorney. I stopped. I didn't tremble. I slowly lifted my head, looking past Jason's desperate, hungry eyes, trying to find even a shadow of the boy I had raised. He wasn't there. Just one more question. Jason, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the electric tension in the room. Before I sign this, can you look me straight in the eye and tell me, as your mother, that you have not taken a single dollar from my accounts for your own personal use? He flinched. His gaze darted to Madison, then back to me. A film of sweat glistened on his upper lip. He licked his lips, the cogs turning, calculating the final lie. He forced a pained, loving smile. Mum, of course not. I have never done anything to hurt you. Everything I have done has been to protect you. The last word was still in the air when the front door burst open, smashing against the hallway wall. It wasn't a knock. The entire frame splintered. Police. We have a search warrant. The living room, my quiet, safe living room, was instantly full of dark blue uniforms, tactical vests, and grim, professional faces. Kelsey Ward and Cole Briggs entered right behind the first officer, their expressions hard. Jason's reaction was pure, animal panic. He scrambled backward, kicking the coffee table over, scattering the fraudulent documents across the carpet. What is this? Get out. This is a misunderstanding, he shrieked, his voice cracking. He wheeled on me, his finger shaking as he pointed at me. She's not well, I told you. She's confused. She's not stable, Mum. Tell them. Tell them they're making a mistake. He was trying to use my senility as his final shield. I stood up slowly. The tiny microphone under my cardigan felt warm against my skin. I looked past Jason, directly at Kelsey, and then at the lead officer, whose body camera was recording my every word. "My name is Linda Carver," I said, my voice perfectly clear and steady. "I am of sound mind and body. These two individuals, my son Jason Carver and his wife Madison Sloan, are here today attempting to coerce me into signing documents that would transfer all my assets to their control under false pretenses." The look of complete, utter betrayal on Jason's face was the most painful thing I had ever seen. The concerned son mask evaporated, leaving only the terrified, guilty child, while one officer cuffed Jason, who had offered no resistance. Madison suddenly crumpled to the floor, her hand flying to her chest. "I can't breathe," she gasped. My heart. "I think I'm having an attack." It was a clumsy, desperate performance. A female officer knelt beside her, clearly unimpressed. "Ma'am, I need you to sit up." While checking Madison's pulse, the officer glanced into the expensive designer handbag Madison had dropped. "Well, what's this?" she said, pulling out a slim, silver USB drive. Madison's eyes flew open, her heart attack instantly forgotten. She lunged for it, but the officer easily held her back. Cole stepped forward. "That's covered by the warrant." Later, we would learn it was exactly what he expected: copies of the fraudulent Northline loan agreements, detailed ledgers of money siphoned to offshore accounts, and a meticulously curated list. It was a list of potential clients across 3 states, complete with names, ages, and estimated net worth. All of them were widows and widowers over the age of 65. The twist, the part that truly broke me, came from my own office. While the team searched, a detective came out holding a document in an evidence bag. "Ms. Ward, you need to see this." He handed it to Kelsey. It was a property transfer agreement, similar to the one on the coffee table, but the signature on the bottom line wasn't mine. It was Mark's, a shaky, poorly forged signature of my dead husband. Kelsey looked at the date on the document. It was from 3 months before Mark's stroke. Kelsey looked at me, her professional mask cracking for a second. "Linda, they were planning this when Mark was still alive. They were trying to defraud him first. That was the sound that broke Jason. He heard it. He was sitting on the couch, cuffed, but he heard it." He stared at the document, then at Madison, who was now being pulled to her feet. Before he whispered, his voice uncomprehending, This was happening before you told me your ex-husband's family. You were using me all this time, just like you used him. He wasn't her partner. He was just her next mark, the one with the easiest access." He didn't cry. He just folded in on himself, a hollowed-out man. They led Madison out first. As she passed me, she stopped. Her perfect makeup was streaked with tears of rage. She twisted in the officer's grip and spat a short, ugly laugh. "You think you won," she sneered. "You think getting your money back makes you a winner. You'll be alone for the rest of your life. You old bitch, enjoy your victory, sitting here all alone, watching your only son rot in prison." The words were a calculated, final strike, designed to poison whatever future I had left. I swallowed against the bile in my throat. "I've been alone for a long time. Madison, I said, my voice cold. You just helped me finally see it. And today, at least, I know no one else will have to suffer what you did to me. Jason was last. He was weeping now, openly, begging as they pulled him toward the shattered door. Mum, please don't let them. I'm sorry, Mum. Please, I couldn't watch him cross that threshold. I turned my back, my eyes locking on the photograph of Mark. I clutched the copy of my new will in my pocket. The house was finally quiet. Hours later, Kelsey sat with me at the kitchen table. We have them. Linda, she said softly. Cold. Financial exploitation. Multiple counts of bank fraud. Conspiracy. With that USB drive, Madison is looking at a very long time. But Jason is the key to the entire Northline Data Systems investigation. The men above him are the real prize. We can offer him a deal, a significant reduction in his sentence, if he testifies against the entire network. She looked at me, her eyes full of a weary compassion. But the district attorney won't offer him anything without the primary victim's blessing. It's your choice. Do we use him to take down the whole organization? Or do we let him face the full price for what he did to you? The trial began 6 months later. It was a bigger story than I expected, drawing local media. This wasn't just a family dispute. The connection to the Northline Data Systems fraud had elevated it. The courtroom was packed every day with reporters, other seniors who had followed the case, and legal students. When I took the stand, the room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the lights. I told them everything. Starting from the day I signed the first power of attorney, thinking I was protecting my future. I recounted my drive to the doctor, the forgotten prescription. I told them about the floorboard creaking in the hallway as I stood, frozen, listening to my son's voice. Kelsey asked me to repeat the exact words I heard. I looked at the jury, my voice clear. He said, "Just a few more hours. Maddie, her account will be empty." And then he laughed, and he said, "Seriously, would anyone care if my mum went broke?" The courtroom was utterly still. Jason's lawyer, a man paid for by what little money was left in a joint account Madison hadn't found, tried his best. He painted a picture of a loving, if misguided, son. A son who had been manipulated by a sophisticated predator. He spoke of Jason's grief over his father's death, the pressure of having to care for his aging mother. It was a sympathetic story. Then it was Kelsey's turn for cross-examination. The defense paints a picture of a man burdened by his mother. She said to the jury, "I'd like to play a recording from the day Mrs. Carver overheard her son. This is his voice, discussing the final stages of his plan." She played it. The courtroom filled with Jason's voice, low and thrilled. And then, his laugh, that cold, sharp, triumphant laugh. It echoed in the silent room, utterly destroying the lawyer's narrative of a poor, manipulated boy. Madison was cold, defiant. Her defense was simple. It was all Jason. He was the weak one, the one desperate for money. She was just a wife who trusted her husband. But her story fell apart when Kelsey, in a brilliant move, brought in 2 more witnesses, an elderly man from Austin, Texas, and a woman from Tucson, Arizona. Their stories were almost identical to mine. A whirlwind romance with a younger partner, a new, helpful person in their life, and a sudden, catastrophic financial loss. Madison's professional pattern was laid bare. She wasn't an accomplice. She was the architect. The emotional peak, the moment that will stay with me forever, came during Kelsey's final redirect. She had already proven her case. This was just for the soul of it. She turned to me, her voice gentle. Mrs. Carver, the defendant, Jason Carver, is your only son. Before the jury deliberates on a sentence, they are entitled to know your feelings. Do you, as his mother, wish to ask the court to show him leniency? Every eye in the room swiveled to me. Jason, sitting at the defendant's table, finally looked up. His face was sallow, his eyes red and swollen. He looked broken. I saw him, and in that instant, I saw a flash of every time I had saved him. The time I paid off his college debt. The time I co-signed for the car he crashed. The time I begged Mark not to cut him from the will. I saw a lifetime of my enabling, my shielding, my refusal to see the truth. I had helped create the man who now sat across from me. I took a deep breath. I said, my voice steady, that the court treat Mr. Carver exactly as it would any other adult who has committed these crimes. I do not ask for any special treatment for him that his other victims, the ones from Texas and Arizona, do not also have. The sentence came down an hour later. Madison, given her history as a serial predator, received the maximum, a very long sentence on multiple counts. Jason, because I had agreed to the deal, received a lesser sentence, but it was still significant, long enough to cost him his youth. His sentence was contingent on his full cooperation in the Northline investigation. Before they took him away, he asked to see me. A guard led us to a small, grey waiting room. I agreed. Not as a mother, but as the woman who had just closed the books on the biggest audit of her life. He sat across from me, the cuffs on his wrists. He wept. Mom, please don't cut me out. Please don't sell the house. I'll fix it. I'll get into every program in prison. I'll get a financial certification. I can fix this. I promise. I listened. I heard the words, the same frantic promises I had heard for 30 years. From now on, Jason, I said, my voice not unkind, but firm. Your actions will have to speak for your promises. As for whether you are still my family, that is something I will decide after you have paid back every single thing you took. I left the courthouse and never went back to that house in Aurora. It was sold. The bulk of the money, including the $320,000 they never got to spend, went straight into the newly formed Mark Carver Foundation for victims of elder fraud. I kept just enough for myself. Today, I live in a new apartment in downtown Denver. It's small, but the view is wonderful. On my wall, there is a small plaque, the one from the foundation's first donation. I look at it, and I think about that question. Would anyone care if you went broke? It no longer has any power over me. I finally answered it. I will care. And that is enough. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. So drop a comment below and let's share our thoughts. Please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it some extra love by hitting that hype button so more people can hear it.